In 2022, energy stocks were some of the biggest stories going on overall. We had gas prices hitting above $5, and you have companies like Chevron being up more than 40% on the year. And as a result, people were really excited about investing in energy. But I'm here to talk about a sector of stocks that I've been talking about for a long time on this channel. We're talking about solar stocks. I've been an advocate for solar stocks for the past 2+ years because I think renewable energy stocks are the most exciting place to invest in the stock market. Today we're going to be talking about the state of the solar market overall. We've had a very interesting year when it comes to the stories that are affecting the performance of all these solar companies. We're going to talk about how we got to this point right now with solar. We're going to talk about my bull case overall, some of the things that I see in the overall market that makes me very excited as an investor in solar as a whole, and I'll explain why I'm talking about solar as a whole for my investments. And then finally, I'll talk about a couple stocks that I love going into 2023. Solar is a very difficult place to invest because it's a very complicated topic. So I'm going to talk about some of the areas that I'm looking at to invest in myself personally, and this is always not financial advice. So let's talk about part one, the current state of the solar industry. Solar is a type of company and business that has not been around for a long time. Sure, you can find all the articles about solar going back to the 60s and 70s, but it really did not become a viable option for energy until the early 2000s, especially during the Obama administration. You have some stuff coming out in the Bush administration that really benefited solar, like the beginning of the tax credits. But during the Obama administration from 2008 to around 2016, this is when solar really started taking off and became a viable area to invest and use it as an energy option. During the 8 years that Obama was president, wind power went up 3 times and solar power increased by 2,500% up to 31 gigawatts. The Recovery Act after the financial crisis was one of the big things that pushed the solar industry forward. This increased investments into tech that benefited solar and funded tax incentives that benefited solar by making it more financially viable to put solar panels on commercial properties and, additionally, residential. As I mentioned before, solar has been around for a long time, but up until recently, it was not financially viable. The tech was too expensive, it was too inefficient, and it made putting it on businesses and residential houses like a bad idea. People were only doing it just to show that it was possible, but until this point, it really was not a viable option of producing energy. These tax incentives that were started during the Bush administration and have gone until present day has made it much more attractive to put solar onto different properties. This is something where, at the current state, energy is not super expensive, but having these additional tax incentives makes it much more attractive to make the switch. It's much easier to just go along with the current status quo, but these tax incentives are really exciting. The most recent project is that 30% of all projects finished between 2022 and 2023 will be paid for with tax credits. And then after 2032, that number will slowly decrease, but that could be changed in the future with additional presidencies and additional tax bills. So back in the 2000s, the US and China was really fighting over its market share. And as a result, China did some shady practices. Basically what they did is they wanted China to be the leader when it came to producing solar panels. And as a result, China dumped a lot of their products into the US markets. This was great for American consumers because the price of solar went down significantly during this time, but it was at a price that was below market conditions, meaning that they were selling them for below what they were actually paying for them. So it was a negative for the short term, but it made it so that China was the leader. That practice has since been stopped, and the tech has caught up to the point where American solar panels are financially viable for one of the first times ever. And then, just like pretty much every industry that we talk about, the solar industry is hurt by the lack of microchips. Microchips are incredibly important for a lot of the technology, especially the microinverters that some of these companies are using to harness the solar power and put it into a form of energy source that can be stored for the long term. And as a result, that has hurt the solar industry, which you can say about pretty much everything. Who knows when that's going to be resolved, but hopefully it's coming soon. And the final thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to the current state of solar has to do with interest rates. Interest rates are affecting every part of the economy, and solar is no exception. These contracts that these solar companies are signing are long-term in nature. You see this a lot with some of the renewable projects where it's a 10-year deal to produce X amount of renewable energy resources. That's great, but as inflation goes up, that means that the value of these projects are going to decrease over time. So if you got paid, I think of the salaries of professional athletes. You're getting paid $30 million a year for the next 10 years. Well, 10 years from now, $30 million is not going to be as costly as it is right now. So these contracts are decreasing in value over time as inflation is sitting around 7.2% for the past 12 months. And it makes it so the long-term outlook of these companies, and especially some of these long-term contracts, is not as attractive. All right, so we talked about the state of solar. Let's go to part two, which is why I'm bullish on solar as a whole. You have plenty of renewable options out there. You have wind, you have solar, you have geothermal. But I think solar is one of the most exciting places out there because of some of the benefits that we've seen in the past couple years. The outlook on solar is incredibly good. Right now, solar is only 2.8% of the total US energy resources, and that is expected to increase significantly over the next couple years. You see this as an untapped resource, as the reliance on fossil fuels is going to have to eventually go down, and seeing this as only 2.8% of the total US energy resources means that there's a lot of room that can be gained in the upcoming years. But this low market share is also one of the reasons why it's incredibly volatile. Right now, we have a lot of optimism for the upcoming future, but when things don't come to fruition, whether it be changes in the overall market, resources when it comes to the microchips, this makes it so that people are looking out to the future. And so when things don't go great, it goes down significantly. So we're looking to the future. And while you may have some positive news stories coming out about, the past 3 months solar has increased by this amount, people are really looking towards the future. And whenever that outlook is negatively impacted, it's going to make stocks more volatile as a whole. And that's why on average, solar is a much more volatile industry than something like the oil and gas stocks that we talked about previously with Chevron. So when you're looking at the solar industry as a whole, it's expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 7% up until 2028. And this is something that I've been talking about for the past 2 years as one of my biggest bull cases overall. It is such a small portion of the US market share, and you have these expectations of 7% annual growth over the next decade. That makes me incredibly bullish on it overall. And then I want to put up this graph because I think this graph is absolutely critical. What it shows is the cost of solar energy with the yellow line, and the bars are the total solar installation in the United States. As you can see, the price of solar has gone down significantly, and the amount of installed solar panels has gone up significantly in the past decade. So if the trend continues, this is great news for solar as a whole, because the cost of solar was one of the biggest barriers to entry when it came to my bull case overall. For a while, there was no reason to install solar because it was much more expensive than traditional fossil fuels. Now it's to the point where if you have the upfront costs available to pay for the solar panels, it's going to pay for itself relatively quickly. And right now, solar is an energy saver when it comes to cost. Right now, you're paying between 3 and 6 cents per kilowatt hour, and fossil fuels are costing between 5 and 17 cents. This is finally the step in the right direction that we needed. For the longest time, it was sitting just above the cost of fossil fuels, so people were doing it as a hopeful change that the price was going to go down, and now we're finally seeing it get to the point where the cost of solar is significantly cheaper for the long term than something like a fossil fuel. And then we're seeing some huge news stories coming out about commercial projects. These are the large scale projects that get the headlines, but the residential is the area that I'm most excited about. The most recent news stories that we're talking about is First Solar, ticker symbol FSLR, which is the largest U.S. solar panel maker. Got a deal with Nation Grid to make 1.6 gigawatts of solar panels, and then Meta is adding 720 megawatts of solar to the Silicon Valley facility. These are the news stories that get me really excited about solar, and just the more that comes out, the more excited I am about solar as a whole. And then my final bull case comes from just the trend that we're seeing when it comes to renewable energy. The longer it goes on, the more companies, countries, cities, and states are coming out saying that they're going to make the switch to 100% renewable energy by X date. You can just look at the list of countries. You can just scroll down that list for a long time of companies that have pledged to remove their reliance on fossil fuels by X date. Usually it's 2050. And you have some major states like California and Colorado that have 100% carbon-free targets for 2050. They're going to have to get there some way, and considering solar is only 2.8% of the total energy usage right now, they have a long way to go, and that's why I'm extremely bullish for the long term. Let's finish up this video talking about some stocks that I love for various reasons. Not financial advice, this is just when I'm looking at a type of industry, I'm looking for the leader in very specific things, and I wanted to talk about some of the ones that I saw that interest me, and I'll talk about the one stock that I do actually own when it comes to solar that's been a part of my portfolio for around a year and a half. So first up, we've mentioned it already, is First Solar, ticker symbol FSLR, which is up 75% on the year. And this is my play for just solar production as a whole. This is the panels, not the installation and the maintenance costs. So First Solar has been around for a long time, but for a while it was getting destroyed by China dumping solar panels into the US markets, and it made it so that they were not able to sell their solar panels because why would you buy them when Chinese solar was significantly cheaper? With the cost of solar going down significantly and the tech finally catching up, they've become the leader when it comes to solar panel production. And when it becomes more viable for the commercial and residential solar panels to be put on, I think it's in a great spot. Something you do need to consider is that these solar stocks are incredibly volatile compared to the overall market. And as the market is down significantly in 2022, going into 2023, that volatility could be a huge downside risk. Right now, we're looking at the beta of, 1.29%, meaning that they're going to drop or go up 29% more than the overall market. A beta of 1 means that if the market goes up 1%, the stock will go up 1%. And so a beta of 1.29 means that it is more volatile than the overall market. And that's just something that you always need to consider when buying into a stock, especially when volatility is at a high. The next stock is going to be Enphase Energy, ticker symbol ENPH, being up 64% on the year and a beta of 1.29. It has a very similar topic when it comes to volatility. Enphase Energy is the stock that I would love if I'm more focused on the harnessing of the energy. Solar panels are not very efficient, but as they become more efficient, you need to be able to store it. For the longest time, you just took the solar, you were able to power your house, but you weren't able to store it for the long term. This is when Enphase Energy's microinverters come in, which is able to convert the direct current to a storable battery usage type of solar. And this is what I think is the key to the long-term potential of solar. Yes, you have the potential of being able to pay off your bills right now, but being able to store it for the long term, especially as we have the different changes in temperature. During the summer, those solar panels are going to be popping off, but during the winter, covered in snow, not as efficient. So you need to be able to store it to be able to use that solar reliably through the winter, and especially in the not as sunny months. So ENPH is the leader when it comes to microinverters, and that's what I would buy if I was looking for that type of solar stock. And then finally, this is my personal stock that I own, is going to be the ETF TAN. TAN is a stock that I bought because solar is a very complicated topic. It is very difficult to look at it and go, this is going to be the winner of this market overall. And when I'm in a market where I don't fully understand the topic and I don't feel confident about picking a winner or being worried that I'm going to accidentally pick a loser, I pick the ETF that just goes and follows the overall market. So as a result, I have not been able to capitalize as much on the 2022 increases, as my position is down still, considering I bought, I think, in 2020. But this is what makes me feel the most confident, just because I don't have to pick a winner. And more importantly, I think I'm not going to be stuck with a loser. I am going to be betting on the overall solar market as a whole, and that's why I thought TAN was the best option for me at that point. So let me know what solar stocks you are looking at going into 2023. I think First Solar and Enphase Energy are some of my more exciting picks, and I might add on to them going into 2023 when I make my contribution to my retirement account, which is much more focused on green energy stocks overall. You have stuff like a Sunrun, just other stocks that I've talked about in the past, Canadian Solar, which are great options, but solar as a whole, pretty volatile, so I would be very careful buying in. If you're thinking about stuff for the short term, I'm much more focused on the long term, and that's why I think these solar stocks are very exciting. Let me know what you thought about solar as a whole, and if you want to see more videos from me, they'll be up on the screen right now, and be sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified the next time I put out a video. Thanks for watching. My name is Andy. Let me know what solar stocks you'd like, and let me know what topics you'd like me to hear discussed in a future video. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.